Tony Delucci made a power move that should have worked. Kidnap Bumpy Johnson's pregnant wife, force the King of Harlem to his knees, take over his territory. On paper, it was brilliant. The Italian mob versus one black gangster. But Tony forgot something crucial. Some men don't negotiate. They annihilate. Harlem in the 1940s was a chessboard, and every player knew their squares. On one side sat Bumpy Johnson, the undisputed king of Black Harlem. Numbers rackets, protection schemes, nightclub operations. If money moved through black hands in New York, Bumpy took his cut. But he wasn't just muscle and menace. He was strategy wrapped in street wisdom. A man who'd survived decades in a world designed to kill people who looked like him. On the other side sat Tony Delucci, a rising capo in the Genovese crime family. Young, ambitious, and hungry for the kind of power his father's generation handed to more deserving men. Tony controlled the Italian operations, heroin pipelines, union infiltration, political puppets who danced when he pulled strings. He had money, soldiers, and the arrogance that comes from never truly being told no. For years, an uneasy truce existed between these two worlds. Bumpy didn't push into Italian territory. The Italians didn't overtly challenge Harlem's black kingpin. It was practical, profitable, and fragile as hell. Both men understood that peace was just war waiting for an excuse. But Tony Delucci was a different breed of Italian gangster. He looked at Harlem and saw untapped potential, millions of dollars flowing through what he considered inferior hands. The older mobsters accepted the boundaries. Tony saw them as suggestions from a weaker era. He watched Bumpy Johnson with envy disguised as contempt, waiting for weakness, searching for the perfect moment to strike. When Bumpy married Mayme in 1948, Tony smirked over his espresso. A gangster playing house. How quaint, how soft, how exploitable. Mayme was beautiful, educated, respectable. Everything Bumpy's brutal world wasn't. Tony saw the marriage as proof that Bumpy was going domestic, losing his edge, becoming vulnerable. Then came the pregnancy announcement. 6 months along, Mayme glowing with life, Bumpy protective in ways that made his crew nervous. The King of Harlem was distracted, emotional, human. And Tony Delucci, sitting in his social club in Little Italy, saw not a baby, but a weapon. The perfect leverage to bring down an empire. His underboss, a scarred veteran named Sal Moretti, warned him during a card game. "Boss, Bumpy's different than other coloreds. You take his woman, he won't negotiate. He'll burn everything down, including himself, to get her back." Tony dealt another hand, barely listening. "Sal, you're thinking small. We've got numbers, connections, judges in our pocket. What's Bumpy got? A reputation and some loyal niggers. He'll fold or he'll die. Either way, Harlem becomes ours." Sal said nothing more. He'd been in the life long enough to recognize the sound of a man signing his own death warrant. But Tony was the boss. And in their world, you didn't argue with the boss. You just made sure you weren't standing too close when karma arrived. Tony spent weeks convincing himself and his crew that this was brilliant strategy. Bumpy was just one man. The Italian mob was an institution. They had the NYPD, the politicians, the infrastructure of power that made the impossible routine. One pregnant black woman against the entire Italian mafia? The math was simple. What Tony Delucci failed to calculate was that some men don't do math when you touch their family. They do murder. Systematic, creative, unforgettable murder. And Bumpy Johnson was about to teach the Italian mob a lesson they'd carry to their graves. Power means nothing when a man has already decided you're dead. Tony planned the kidnapping like he was robbing Fort Knox. 3 weeks of surveillance, patterns documented, vulnerabilities identified. He used his best soldiers, men who'd disappeared union bosses and rival gangsters without leaving witnesses. This wasn't some street thug operation. This was professional. Mayme had a routine. Every Thursday morning at 10 a.m., she visited her sister in Brooklyn. The trip took her outside Bumpy's usual protection perimeter, through neighborhoods where Italian eyes watched every corner. Her regular bodyguard was a tough ex-boxer named Raymond, loyal but predictable. Tony's team mapped every traffic light, every turn, every moment where the car would slow down. Thursday, October 14th, 1948. The weather was overcast, threatening rain. Mayme left her Harlem brownstone in a black Cadillac, Raymond driving, another guard in the passenger seat. She wore a yellow dress that accommodated her growing belly, her hand resting protectively on the 7-month bump. She was thinking about baby names, about the nursery Bumpy was having decorated, about the impossible miracle of bringing life into their dangerous world. She never saw the ambush coming. The hit happened at the intersection of Atlantic and Flatbush. 4 cars boxed in the Cadillac with precision timing. 12 men emerged like a coordinated military strike. Raymond reached for his gun. He was fast, well-trained, ready to die for Bumpy's family. But Tony's crew was faster. 3 bullets hit Raymond before his finger touched the trigger. The second guard took 2 rounds through the windshield. Both men dead in seconds, their blood splattered across the dashboard. Mayme screamed as her door was ripped open. Hands grabbed her, not rough enough to hurt the baby, but firm enough to communicate helplessness. A cloth bag went over her head. She fought, kicking, scratching, but pregnant and surrounded, she never had a chance. The entire operation lasted 90 seconds. By the time witnesses processed what they'd seen, the cars were gone, vanishing into Brooklyn's maze of streets. They took her to a safe house in the Bronx, an ordinary-looking 2-story home on a quiet residential street, the kind of place nobody would suspect. Inside, it was a fortress. Barred windows, reinforced doors, 6 heavily armed guards rotating 8-hour shifts. Mayme was locked in an upstairs bedroom, furnished but prison-like. They brought her food, water, access to a bathroom. Tony had given strict orders. Keep her healthy, keep the baby safe. She was an investment, not a victim. At least, that's how he saw it. Bumpy got the call at 11:47 a.m. He was in a meeting with his lieutenants, discussing expansion of their numbers operation. The phone rang. His secretary's voice cracked with terror. "Boss, it's Raymond's backup. There's been an incident." Bumpy's face went blank. The kind of blank that made grown men step backward. He picked up the phone, listened for 30 seconds without speaking, then slowly placed the receiver down. The room froze. Everyone knew something catastrophic had happened. Bumpy stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked toward the door. His voice came out quiet, deadly calm. Mayme's been taken. Find out who. Find out where. I want names in 6 hours, or I start burying my own people for incompetence." The room exploded into action the moment he left. The ransom call came that evening at 7 p.m. Bumpy was alone in his study, smoking a cigarette, staring at a photograph of Mayme. The phone rang. He answered on the first ring. "Bumpy Johnson, I've been looking forward to this conversation." Tony Delucci's voice oozed confidence, the sound of a man holding all the cards. "Where is she?" Not a question, a demand. "Safe and sound, for now. Let's talk business, you and me, man to man." Tony paused for effect. "Your woman and that little bastard she's carrying, they're my guests. They stay guests as long as you're reasonable. Here's the deal. Sign over your Harlem operations. All of it. Numbers, protection, nightclubs, everything. You walk away breathing, relocate somewhere nice, and she comes home safe. You've got 48 hours to decide." The silence stretched so long, Tony thought the line had disconnected. Then Bumpy spoke, his voice so quiet, Tony had to strain to hear it. "Tony, you just killed yourself and everyone who helped you. I'm not bringing money. I'm not bringing papers. I'm bringing coffins. 6 for your soldiers. Something special for you. Tell them to make their peace." Tony laughed, a genuine, delighted sound. "Bumpy, you're a smart guy. Don't be stupid. You can't win this. We've got your entire world in a locked room. Play tough. She dies. The baby dies. You lose everything. Be smart. Sign the papers." Bumpy hung up. Tony turned to his crew, grinning. "He's bluffing. Give him 24 hours to panic, then call again. He'll break." But Sal Moretti, standing in the corner, felt ice in his stomach. He'd heard something in Bumpy's voice that Tony missed. Not fear, not negotiation, just certainty. The kind of certainty that comes from a man who's already decided you're dead and is just working out the logistics. "Boss," Sal said carefully, "maybe we should reconsider." "Reconsider?" Tony cut him off. "We've got his pregnant wife. What's he gonna do, Sal? He's one nigger with a reputation. We're the goddamn Mafia. This is over. We won." Sal said nothing more. But that night, he went home and updated his will. Bumpy Johnson didn't rage. He didn't throw furniture, didn't make wild threats, didn't indulge in the theatrical fury that lesser men mistake for strength. Instead, he went cold. The kind of cold that drops the temperature in a room. The kind that makes survival instincts scream warnings. Within 2 hours of the kidnapping, every major player in Bumpy's organization assembled in the basement of his Lenox Avenue headquarters. 15 men, each one a specialist. Enforcers, strategists, information brokers. The criminal architects who'd helped Bumpy build an empire in a city designed to crush black ambition. Bumpy entered the room at midnight. Nobody spoke. He walked to the head of the table, lit a cigarette, and let the silence become unbearable before breaking it. "Tony Delucci has my wife. He thinks this is business." Bumpy's eyes moved across each face. "It's not business. It's extinction. His extinction. Everyone who helped him. Everyone who knew and didn't stop it. I want total war. But I want it smart." "Questions?" His head enforcer, A scarred giant named Prophet spoke first. "Boss, Tony's got Italian mob protection. We hit his crew. We're at war with families who've got politicians, cops, judges." "I know what they've got," Bumpy interrupted. "I also know they're not unified. Tony's ambitious, which means he's made enemies. We're going to use them." He turned to his intelligence chief, a quiet man named Early, who ran informants across the city. "Early, I need everything. Where is Mayme? How many guards? Shift rotations. Tony's movements, vulnerabilities. I need it in 12 hours. Early nodded. "Already working it, boss. Got 3 leads." Bumpy's strategist, a former professor turned numbers genius named Solomon, cleared his throat. "Bumpy, even if we locate Mayme, extracting her from an Italian safe house without starting a citywide gang war, then we make sure the Italians want Tony dead as much as we do." Bumpy stubbed out his cigarette. "Solomon, I need you to reach out to the Gambino family, specifically Carlo Gambino. Tell him I want a meeting. Tomorrow." The room went silent. Carlo Gambino was one of the most powerful mob bosses in New York. Reaching out to him was either brilliant or suicidal. "Boss," Prophet said slowly, "Carlo Gambino ain't gonna help a black gangster against another Italian. Yes, he will, because Tony Delucci is a problem for him too." Bumpy leaned forward. "Tony's expansion hungry. He wants Harlem today, but tomorrow he'll want Brooklyn docks, Gambino's union contracts, everything. Carlo's smart enough to see Tony as a future threat. I'm offering him a solution. Help me eliminate Tony, and I'll make sure it's clean, quiet, and profitable for everyone except the Delucci crew." Solomon's eyes widened with understanding. "You're offering them Tony's operations?" "Exactly. They help me get Mayme, I handle the dirty work, they absorb Tony's territory. Everybody wins, except Tony." Early walked in with a folder. "Boss, got something. One of our maids works for Tony's underboss, Sal Moretti. She heard them talking. Mayme's in a Bronx safe house. Address pending, but we're close." Bumpy took the folder. "How many guards?" 6, rotating shifts. Tony visits twice daily to check his investment. Prophet cracked his knuckles. 6 guards, boss? We can take them." "Not we. Me." Bumpy's voice cut through the room. "This is personal. I go in, I bring her out. But I need the rest of you handling everything else. Blocking escape routes, cutting communications, making sure nobody interrupts." The room erupted in protest. His men wanted to protect him, to fight beside him. Bumpy raised a hand for silence. "Listen to me. If I take a crew, it's an invasion. It's war. If I go alone, it's one man getting his wife back. The optics matter. The Italians need to see this as personal vendetta, not territorial aggression. Trust me." At 3 a.m., the meeting broke. Plans were set. By dawn, Early's informants had the exact address: 1847 Crotona Avenue, Bronx. A 2-story house with 6 guards, reinforced security, and Mayme locked in an upstairs bedroom. At 9 a.m., Bumpy sat across from Carlo Gambino in a private room at Rayo's restaurant. Carlo was 60, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and calculating. He listened without interruption as Bumpy laid out the situation. "Tony Delucci kidnapped my pregnant wife to force me out of Harlem. He's using Italian mob resources for personal ambition. You know what that means, Carlo. Today, it's my territory. Tomorrow, he's looking at yours." Carlo sipped his espresso. "And you want my help, why?" You're asking an Italian to help kill another Italian over a... He paused delicately. Over a personal matter. I'm asking a businessman to eliminate a future competitor. Help me get my wife back. And Tony's operations are yours. His drug pipeline, his union contacts, his political puppets, all of it. I just want my family. You get everything else. Carlo studied Bumpy for a long moment. And if I say no, then I get her anyway. But it'll be bloody, messy, and expensive for everyone. Wars are bad for business, Carlo. I'm offering you the clean version. Carlo smiled slightly. You've got balls, Bumpy. I'll give you that. What do you need? Phone lines cut to the safe house. Escape routes blocked. Your people looking the other way for 6 hours. That's it. And Tony disappears permanently. No body, no evidence, no blowback on your family. Carlo extended his hand. Deal. But Bumpy, this never happened. We never met. And you owe me. Understood. At 2 p.m., Bumpy gathered his core team one final time. Tomorrow, 4 p.m., we move. Early, confirm Mayme's location. Prophet, coordinate with Gambino's people on route blocking. Solomon, have 6 coffins ready. Good ones. We're sending a message. And Tony? Prophet asked. Bumpy's smile was colder than winter. Tony gets something special. Something that reminds every mobster in this city that some lines you don't cross. The room understood. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a reckoning. 48 hours after Mayme's kidnapping, Bumpy Johnson made his move. Not at midnight under cover of darkness. At 4 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, when the residential Bronx street was full of families, children playing stickball, old women watching from windows. Tony's guards would expect an attack under cover of night. Bumpy brought war in broad daylight. Inside the safe house, Mayme sat in the locked bedroom, 7 months pregnant, exhausted but unbroken. They'd fed her, allowed her bathroom breaks under guard supervision, treated her as a valuable hostage rather than a person. She refused to cry where they could see, refused to beg, refused to give them the satisfaction of her fear. She knew Bumpy, knew him in her bones. He was coming. The only question was, when? The 6 guards were professionals, ex-soldiers, experienced mob enforcers, men who'd done this before. Dominic watched the front entrance. Angelo covered the back. Marco monitored the upstairs hallway outside Mayme's room. Leo, Paulie, and Vinny rotated between positions, maintaining constant coverage. They were armed, alert, confident in their numbers and Tony's protection. They never suspected the phone lines had already been cut. Never noticed the black sedans blocking both ends of the street, Gambino soldiers ensuring nobody escaped. Never realized that the old woman across the street, the one who'd lived there for 20 years, had been paid $500 to visit her sister for the afternoon. The attack began at 4:17 p.m. Prophet and his crew hit the back door first, controlled explosion, not loud enough to panic the neighborhood, sufficient to blow the reinforced lock. Angelo spun toward the sound, reaching for his shotgun. He never completed the motion. 2 silenced bullets, center mass, professionally placed. Angelo dropped without a sound. Simultaneously, Bumpy approached the front door alone. Dominic saw him through the peephole, one black man in an expensive suit, walking up the steps like he was visiting for dinner. Dominic's training screamed trap. But before he could process it, Bumpy kicked the door with inhuman force. The reinforced wood splintered. Dominic stumbled backward, reaching for his gun. Bumpy was faster. A knife appeared in his hand, quick, brutal, silent. Dominic went down gurgling, blood pooling beneath him. Upstairs, Marco heard the commotion. He turned toward the stairs, automatic rifle raised, professional instincts taking over. Prophet appeared at the top of the stairwell, Tommy gun in hand. The hallway erupted in gunfire. Marco was good, got 3 shots off, one catching Prophet in the shoulder. But Prophet was a survivor of 100 Harlem gunfights. He walked forward through the bullets and put Marco down with a burst that ended the fight. Leo and Paulie, stationed in the kitchen, made their stand there. They flipped the table, created a defensive position, laid down covering fire toward the back entrance. Early's crew came through like smoke, tear gas canisters, flashbangs, overwhelming sensory assault. The kitchen became chaos. Paulie broke first, running for the side door. He made it 3 steps before bullets from multiple angles cut him down. Leo, half blind from gas, firing randomly, screaming for backup that wasn't coming, lasted another 30 seconds before silence replaced gunfire. That left Vinny. Vinny was the smartest of Tony's guards. When the attack started, he didn't engage. He ran straight to Mayme's room, kicked the door open, dragged her out of bed. She screamed, protecting her belly, terrified for her baby. Vinny pressed a pistol to her temple, backing toward the corner window, using her as a human shield. "Back off!" he screamed toward the hallway. "I've got the woman! I'll kill her and the kid! Back the fuck off!" The house went silent. Bumpy's crew held their positions, weapons trained but unable to fire without risking Mayme. Seconds ticked by. Sweat poured down Vinny's face. His hand shook, but his grip stayed firm. Then, Bumpy appeared in the doorway. Vinny saw him, and something in his bladder almost gave way. This wasn't the dapper gangster from newspaper photos. This was something primal, something that had walked through 5 armed men and emerged covered in their blood. Bumpy's suit was ruined. His hands were red. His eyes were empty of everything except purpose. "Let her go," Bumpy said quietly. "Fuck you! I'll kill her! I swear to Christ, I'll—" "You won't." Bumpy took a step forward. "Because you're a professional. You know killing her means you die painful instead of quick. Let her go, walk away. I'll give you a 5-minute head start. That's the deal." Vinny's calculation was visible on his face. He was a dead man either way. But 5 minutes of life versus immediate execution? His grip loosened slightly. Mayme felt it. In that instant, she made her choice. She slammed her elbow backward into Vinny's ribs, not hard enough to really hurt him, but enough to surprise him, enough to shift his aim for a fraction of a second. Bumpy moved. He covered the distance impossibly fast, one hand deflecting the gun upward, the other grabbing Vinny's throat. The pistol fired, bullet hitting the ceiling. Then Bumpy's hand tightened, and Vinny's windpipe collapsed. He dropped, gasping, dying slowly. Bumpy turned to Mayme. The killer disappeared. The husband emerged. He pulled her into his arms, gentle despite the violence coating his hands, his voice breaking. "I've got you, baby. I've got you." She buried her face in his chest, finally allowing herself to cry. "The baby is fine. You're both fine. You're safe now." He held her for 5 seconds, all they could afford. Then he pulled back, cupping her face. "Prophet's gonna take you out the back, get you to a doctor. I need you to not look, not listen. Just go with him, okay?" "Bumpy, what are you—" "Go, baby, please." Prophet appeared, shoulder bleeding but functional. He took Mayme's arm gently, leading her down the stairs, carefully stepping over bodies, shielding her eyes when they passed Dominic. A car waited in the back alley. Within 3 minutes, Mayme was en route to a black doctor in Harlem who owed Bumpy his life. Bumpy watched her leave. Then he turned to his crew. "Clean this up. 6 coffins like we discussed. I want them delivered over the next 3 days. Different locations, different Italian clubs. Make it look professional." Early nodded. "And Tony?" Bumpy checked his watch. 5:03 p.m. "Tony comes for his daily check-in at 5:30. I'll be waiting." At 5:28 p.m., Tony Delucci arrived with 2 bodyguards, cocky and confident. He'd been in his social club all day, playing cards, waiting for Bumpy to crack, ready to negotiate the final terms of Harlem's surrender. He walked up to the safe house, whistling. The door was unlocked. Red flag. The house was silent. Bigger red flag. Tony drew his pistol. His bodyguards flanked him, weapons ready. They entered slowly, professionally. The front room appeared empty. They moved deeper into the house. In the kitchen, they found the bodies. 5 of the 6 guards, arranged neatly, respectfully. Closed eyes, folded hands, already cooling. Tony's blood turned to ice. "Boss, we need to leave, now!" His bodyguard's voice was tight with panic. A door closed behind them. They spun. Bumpy Johnson stood in the kitchen doorway, alone, unarmed, covered in dried blood. Behind him, Prophet and a dozen men emerged from shadows surrounding the room, weapons drawn. Tony's bodyguards aimed at Bumpy. Bumpy's crew aimed at them. Mexican standoff. "Bumpy," Tony's voice cracked slightly. "Let's talk about this. Business is business. We can work something out. I've got money, connections." "You made it personal when you touched her," Bumpy interrupted. His voice was eerily calm. "So now, it's permanent." "Wait, we can—" Bumpy nodded to his crew. "Take them." The bodyguards never got a shot off. Bumpy's men moved with brutal efficiency. Disarmed, restrained, dragged toward the basement. Tony screamed, begged, offered everything he had. Bumpy followed them down the stairs. What happened in that basement remained between Bumpy and Tony Delucci. Prophet stood guard at the top of the stairs. The sounds that emerged, screams, pleading, the wet sounds of violence, lasted 17 minutes. Then silence. Bumpy emerged alone. He was cleaning his hands on a rag, his expression blank. "Basement needs extensive cleaning. Use lye. Lots of it. Nothing identifiable." "And the body?" "Boss." Bumpy's smile was terrifying in its emptiness. "What body?" Tony Delucci's car was found abandoned near the Hudson River docks 3 days later. His bodyguards' bodies were never recovered. The Italian mob asked no questions. Carlo Gambino absorbed Tony's operations exactly as negotiated. The police investigation was perfunctory at best. Nobody looked too hard for a missing mobster who'd started a war he couldn't finish. The first coffin arrived at the Genovese Social Club on Mulberry Street on Sunday morning. Beautiful mahogany, brass handles, professional funeral home delivery. Inside, Dominic Russo, the front door guard, dressed in his best suit, hands folded, a single black rose placed on his chest. Attached to the rose was a note in elegant handwriting. This man worked for Tony Delucci. No threats, no demands, just facts and flowers. The Genovese capos gathered around the coffin, faces grim. This wasn't an insult, it was almost respectful. Bumpy had killed their soldier, but honored the body, paid for a proper coffin, treated death with dignity. In the mob world, this meant something. It meant rules have been followed, even in murder. The second coffin arrived Monday at a Bronx funeral home owned by Italian interests. Angelo Martino, the backdoor guard. Same presentation, same black rose, same note. This man worked for Tony Delucci. The third, fourth, and fifth coffins came Tuesday, delivered to the homes of the dead men's families. Marco, Leo, and Paulie, each returned with the same ceremonial care. The families wept, but they also understood. Their sons and brothers had died in the life, following orders, accepting risk. Bumpy had given them closure, when he could have just disappeared the bodies. The sixth coffin arrived Wednesday at Sal Moretti's restaurant. Vinnie Calabrese, the last guard, delivered with the same black rose and note. Sal stood over the coffin for a long time. He'd warned Tony, begged him to reconsider, watched his boss ignore every sign that this would end badly. Now 6 good soldiers were dead, and Tony himself had vanished like smoke. That evening, Sal received a visitor. Prophet, Bumpy's head enforcer, walked into the restaurant during dinner service. The room tensed. Guns were probably aimed under tables, but Prophet raised his hands peacefully. "Mr. Moretti, message from Bumpy Johnson. He wants you to know the war's over. No more coffins coming. Tony's problem is solved. Mr. Gambino's taking over the operations as agreed. Bumpy goes back to Harlem. You go back to business. Clean slate." Sal studied Prophet carefully. "And Tony?" Prophet's face remained neutral. "What Tony? I ain't heard of nobody named Tony lately. Have you?" The silence stretched. Then Sal nodded slowly. "No, can't say I have." "Good. Then we're done here. Bumpy also wants you to know, the 6 men, they died professional, quick and clean as it could be. He respects soldiers doing their job, just not the man who gave them orders." Sal appreciated the distinction. In their world, that mattered. Tell him the Genovese family has no quarrel with Harlem." Prophet nodded and left. The 6 coffins became legend in mob circles. Bumpy Johnson had done the impossible, struck the Italian Mafia, and walked away not just alive, but respected. The brilliance was in the execution. He'd made it personal enough to justify the violence, but political enough to avoid lasting war. Carlo Gambino absorbed Tony's drug operations and union contacts exactly as negotiated. The Genovese family accepted Sal's promotion to Tony's old position. The Lucchese family quietly appreciated one less ambitious competitor. Everybody got something, except Tony Delucci. The NYPD opened an investigation into Tony's disappearance. It went nowhere. Detectives interviewed mob associates who suddenly couldn't remember Tony's face. They searched for witnesses who'd all developed convenient amnesia. The case file grew dust on a shelf somewhere in the Bronx precinct, unsolved and eventually forgotten. But the underworld remembered. The story spread through every illegal operation in New York. Bumpy Johnson's pregnant wife was kidnapped by an Italian couple. 6 guards died. The couple vanished. 6 coffins were delivered with black roses. Harlem's king had sent a message that echoed through every criminal enterprise. Family is the line. Cross it, and power means nothing. Young mobsters were told the story as a warning. See what happened to Tony Delucci? That's what you get when you think you're untouchable. When you forget that some men don't negotiate, they just eliminate. The black roses became symbolic. For years afterward, if a mobster wanted to send a serious message, they'd leave a black rose. It meant, I'm following rules, but I'm deadly serious. It meant, I learned from what happened to Tony. Nobody ever tried to take Mayme again. Nobody targeted Bumpy's family. Nobody even made jokes about it. The 6 coffins had drawn a permanent line in red ink that every criminal in New York understood. And somewhere, in a basement that no longer existed, in a foundation that was poured over with concrete during a construction project nobody remembered, Tony Delucci's final resting place remained unknown. Bumpy never confirmed, never denied, never spoke about it again. The only acknowledgement came years later when a young gangster asked Bumpy directly, "Boss, what really happened to Tony Delucci?" Bumpy had smiled, cold and knowing. Tony made a mistake, the kind you only make once. That was all anyone ever got. 3 months after the kidnapping, on a cold January morning in 1949, Mayme Johnson gave birth to a healthy baby girl. The delivery happened at Harlem Hospital, surrounded by the best black doctors money could buy, and a dozen of Bumpy's most trusted men standing guard in the hallways. Bumpy held his daughter for the first time with the same hands that had ended 7 lives to protect her mother. He stared at her tiny face, her perfect fingers wrapped around his thumb, and something in his hardened heart cracked open. This fragile, beautiful life, this was what it had all been for. This was why men like Tony Delucci had to be erased from existence. They named her Margaret, after Mayme's mother. The christening was held at Abyssinian Baptist Church, and the attendance shocked even Harlem's gossips. Black gangsters and Italian mobsters sat in the same pews, an unholy alliance forged in blood and business. Carlo Gambino himself attended, bringing an expensive silver rattle as a gift, a gesture of respect that spoke volumes. After the ceremony, Carlo pulled Bumpy aside in the church vestibule. "Beautiful daughter, Bumpy. May she never know the life we live." "That's the plan," Bumpy replied. Carlo smiled slightly. "You handled the Tony situation with impressive efficiency. The other families noticed. You've earned a certain status in our world. Respect that crosses color lines, which is rare. Don't waste it." "Wasn't trying to earn respect, Carlo. Just wanted my family safe." "That's why you earned it. Carlo extended his hand. The debt is paid. We're square. But if you ever need something that requires institutional cooperation, you call me first. As a friend, not just business. They shook hands, two kings acknowledging each other's kingdoms. But not everything was celebration and peace. The kidnapping had changed Bumpy in ways that Mayme noticed immediately. He'd always been protective, but now it bordered on paranoia. Their home became a fortress. Reinforced doors, armed guards rotating 24/7, bulletproof glass installed in every window. Mayme couldn't leave the house without at least 3 bodyguards. Margaret's nursery had a panic room attached. "Bumpy, we can't live like this forever," Mayme said one night, watching him check the window locks for the 3rd time. "Yes, we can." His voice was flat, final. "I almost lost you once. I won't risk it again." She understood. Trauma had carved permanent grooves in his psyche. The 3 days Mayme had been gone had aged him years. He woke up from nightmares, reaching across the bed to make sure she was there. He checked on Margaret compulsively, sometimes standing over her crib for hours just watching her breathe. The legend, meanwhile, took on a life of its own. In Harlem barbershops, old men told the story to young hustlers. Bumpy Johnson had his pregnant wife kidnapped by the Italian mob. You know what he did? Went to war. Killed 6 guards, made the mob boss disappear, sent back 6 coffins with flowers. That's a man. That's what you do for family. In Italian social clubs, the story was told as a cautionary tale. Tony Delucci thought he was smart, thought he could muscle a black gangster. Bumpy Johnson taught him that power ain't about what you control, it's about what you're willing to lose. Tony lost everything, including his life. The Black Roses became iconic. Florists in Little Italy reported a surge in black rose orders. Mobsters sending them to enemies as warnings, leaving them at graves, using them as symbols of serious intent. The Delucci warning, some called it. A reminder that certain lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. But the most unexpected legacy came from the black community. Civil rights activists, who typically avoided association with criminals, quietly acknowledged what Bumpy had done. He'd proven that black power could challenge white institutional violence and win. In an era when black men were lynched with impunity, when police brutality was routine, when the system offered no justice, Bumpy Johnson had taken justice into his own hands and made the oppressors pay. He never became a political figure, never spoke at rallies or marched in protests, but his name was whispered in meetings. If Bumpy Johnson can make the mob back down, maybe we're not as powerless as they want us to believe. Years passed. Margaret grew up surrounded by love and protection, shielded from her father's world but aware of his reputation. She became a teacher, married a good man, had children of her own. Bumpy and Mayme grew old together, their love deepened by the trauma they'd survived. Bumpy died in 1968, collapsing in Harlem's streets from a heart attack. Thousands attended his funeral, criminals and citizens, politicians and preachers, black and Italian, all paying respects to the King of Harlem. Carlo Gambino sent a massive flower arrangement. At the center was a single black rose. Mayme understood the symbolism. She kept that rose, pressed it in a book, saved it until her own death, decades later. The story of the kidnapping and the 6 coffins outlived everyone involved. It became myth, passed down through generations of criminals and civilians alike. Details changed, embellished, dramatized, but the core truth remained. Bumpy Johnson's pregnant wife was kidnapped. He brought her home safe. And he sent back 6 coffins as a message that still echoes through the underworld. Every year, on Margaret's birthday, throughout Bumpy's life, an anonymous black rose would appear on their doorstep. Nobody ever claimed responsibility. Mayme suspected it was Carlo Gambino, continuing to pay respects. Bumpy suspected it was one of his own crew, reminding him of the price paid for family. Either way, it meant the same thing. Some debts are paid in blood, some lessons are written in coffins, and some love is worth going to war over. Bumpy Johnson proved all 3. And the 6 coffins, delivered with roses and respect, became the permanent reminder that in a world of criminals and killers, the most dangerous man is the one fighting for something more valuable than power. He's fighting for love. And love, when properly motivated, will send you home in a box with a flower on top and a note that simply reads, "This man made a mistake."